so back, folks. Week 2 of the NFL season is here. Michael McQuaid, Mark Hogan. We're talking to Jason in a minute for Pro Football Ireland. Ireland's biggest, Ireland's best, Ireland's biggest American football podcast network, college football podcast, domestic game, and the NFL. As we roll into week 2 of the NFL season, no Jason this week as he is currently on IR. We wish Jason well in his recovery from his ACL. He'll be back next week. Enjoyed the crack with him last week. Stuck with a Kildare man this week. Mark, how we doing? Happy week 2, man.
Yeah, as I take out my phone to text Jason all the best because I completely forgot to do that
Oh
until
my
this
god, you
minute.
forgot. He tweeted, man. He literally tweeted out about it. And we'll see how
Ah,
lazy I am for people on the video. Am I lazy enough to put a big, lovely graphic up wishing Jason the best? We'll find out. But he put a tweet up and he tagged us. How did you not see it?
oh my
You be the
God,
busy
he
man,
tagged
Mark.
us. I do be a busy man, but I try and keep an eye on Twitter. No, that's shocking for me. There's no excuse. And like literally the last time he was going in for surgery back in like the summertime, I did text him. So maybe I get some brainy points. Maybe I just forward that text again.
Brownie points. Come on. For us, a couple of weeks now to London. Excited for that, man. Excited to get over to Wembley in a couple of weeks. But for people watching or people listening, if you're listening to this podcast on the Thursday, listening on a Friday, Saturday, what we do different. We don't do picks. We talk through different topics in detail and we have a bit of crack. If you want to hear picks, there's a Friday morning podcast with Jeff Reinebold where me and Jeff give some ridiculous picks. There will be an interesting few picks here for people listening. But week 2 starts on Thursday night when you get the Vikings going to the Eagles, Green Bay on Sunday going to the Falcons, Vegas going to Buffalo, the Ravens going to Cincinnati, Seattle going to Detroit in a spicy one, the Colts playing the Texans, the Chiefs playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Bears playing Baker, Buck. Chiefs. Interesting, I said Chiefs instead of Chargers. Chargers at Tennessee, Giants at Cardinals, the Niners at the Rams and Levi South, the Jets, Rogerless Jets at Dallas, Washington at Denver, Miami at New England in Sunday Night Football, and 2 Monday Night Football games, New Orleans against Carolina, and Cleveland going to Pittsburgh. That's a spicy week, Mark, to start off with. That is spicy, man. There's some really interesting matchups there, and we'll not go into detail on it, but just generally a really interesting week because of what happened last week.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there's a massive amount to get into, but when you say the Jags Chiefs game, it's something that I was thinking about yesterday morning, being like, man, I don't the sky is not falling on the Chiefs. Let's put that there. But when you look forward to what you mentioned a second ago, London, with the Jaguars in only a couple of
Mm.
weeks after that time, facing the Falcons, who look fantastic. During the release of those games and over the summer, we talked about London, and it was the Bills that we were excited to see. And I was kind of like, wait, what if it's the Falcons Jags game that is like literally the barn burner game that we get in London this week? It's like just how it's been set up now. It's like that's the game that I'm really excited to see.
It's funny because the games for us on TV in Ireland and for people, we appreciate people listening in the UK also, folks, and further beyond than that. That KC Jacksonville game is on Sky and it's the Jets against Dallas on Sky at 9 o'clock. Oh dear, I'm sure it'll be a good game. Let's talk a bit of football. Let's back it up, Mark. Let's look at a team that we're intrigued by after week 1. And let's talk about how they're going to back it up week 2. I'm scared to ask you to go first because I've picked a team and I have no idea if you picked the same one because I should have asked you about this. Who have you picked?
Uh so I was gonna do the Browns because they were super spicy, and obviously I was kind of gone in on them in the off season, but I've ended up going for the Miami Dolphins.
Oh,
I had a bit of a cheat. I was listening to you on Jeff Reinebold the other day, and you mentioned the Packers. So I presume you're going Packers for this one. Or you're going to
no.
shock me later on. Oh wow, okay. So let's go into the Dolphins then, and I'll figure out your surprise in a minute.
It's well, yours or sorry, mine is not the Dolphins, so you bomb away. You're grand.
No, so I was really impressed, obviously, by the Dolphins, and the reason I didn't go Browns is because we have to talk about the Dolphins because they were the only team you could really say in the AFC this week that took advantage after the Chiefs lost the opening game. And when you look within that division, that obviously with Rodgers out and with Buffalo, like I don't know, being held hostage by Josh Allen suddenly, what's up with that? Like the Dolphins are going to be the darling of the NFL now for the next couple of weeks, it seems. We obviously when you talk about the Chiefs last year, it was all about the wide receiver and then how Tyreek Hill had come away. And what an exclamation mark after how the Chiefs had no wide receiver to go and do what Tyreek and Tua did on Sunday was absolutely class to see. And whatever about that connection between Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes, it looks alive and well with Tyreek and Tua. What was it? 466 yards Tua put up.
Yeah,
And
ridiculous.
then the yardage, 215 yards and 2 touchdowns by Tyreek. But it wasn't even that he got like 2 gimme touchdowns. The first was a 35-yard like lob into the end zone, which we always love to see those. But then the second one was what, from 4 yards out. But the coverage was so tight. Like
Yeah.
that was the difference. And it was the way that Tyreek got it. Like when you look at next gen stats, those couple of touchdowns were like in the 30 to 40% chance of completion rate. So I absolutely loved that. But if we go in deeper again, you have to look at kind of like the under the radar kind of things like Braxton Berrios. Because the emphasis that teams are putting on Jalen Waddle and Tyreek, it means the likes of Braxton Berrios are given a lot more room. So he had 3 catches, but all of them were kind of like off script plays that he was able to work back to the ball. And he has that space because those guys are being looked after. So I was really impressed with that. Waddle, it sounds like he might have been hurt. They still have Teron Armstead to come back. The run game really needs to develop still. I mean, that's what I'm hoping to see this year. We obviously want to see improvement from Vic Fangio's defense. I mean, the linebackers weren't good against the run. You kind of want to see them blitz more, but we know that that's not what Vic Fangio does. So I want to see, can they back it up with the offense? And those little things that I'm after naming, I want to see, can they develop those?
I think the biggest, like, I've really enjoyed the Monday Morning Football with Michaela and Connor because it's been a different element to this brand. But the thing that I've not missed because I've enjoyed having those two on, and I think it does develop Pro Football Ireland into what I believe is Ireland's best American football podcast, is having you on, having Jason on as well, talking, because we don't get a chance, because I'm not busy on Sunday night. I'm like, right, well, I'll record these ones and then I'll check in with you on like the Monday or Tuesday, and it's like that game on Sunday was just so good. I remember coming onto the podcast with Connor being like we were both hyper, like, oh my god, football's back. Like this is 10 out of 10. And the way the two have played was just sensational. And that takes nothing away from the LA Chargers. It was just unreal. And you mentioned Jeff. Before I give my pick, I should probably say that Jeff is going on tour. You can check out our social media for the dates. And I should also give a big thanks to our sponsors, 8 Sport, the official betting partner of the NFL in the UK and Ireland. They're so nice. They even gave us some lovely stickers, which I have on my mug for people watching this right now. I'm going to be controversial. Never mind last week. You opened up your power ranking saying that, talking about 2 teams in the league. Tampa Bay was one and the LA Rams was the other, and you were completely damn right to open up and say that, because I don't think anybody predicted that either team would win last week. And not just either team would win, the manner in which the LA Rams won, going into a fortress in Seattle and silencing Geno Smith and silencing the crowd in Seattle is one thing. But to go in and for their quarterback in Matthew Stafford, who we did not know was genuinely, as far as I'm concerned, we did not know what his fitness would be like again, really, because we knew he had the shoulder issues. He had a considerable amount of time out. We did not know if he'd come back to where he was. 300 yards last week. And having a guy on the running back, and never mind Kyron Williams, but like, who had 2 touchdowns on the day, but also Puka. I can't pronounce Puka's surname. Can we just put this out in the open right now? Puka Nakua, is that the
Nakua, yeah, is how they're
Nakua?
pronouncing it, yeah.
You're talking about next gen stats. He was the 9th player drafted in the 5th round or later since 1970 to have 100 receiving yards in his first career game. The second player to have that since 1987. But I really like Kyron Williams as well. 52 yards with 2 touchdowns. You're talking there about having different guys on the roster. When you've got Cooper Kupp out, the Rams took it to a level that nobody expected last week. And the thing is, they host the Niners this week. And it's like, could they? Could they turn it on against that Niners offense? Never mind some of their defensive weapons that they have. Could the Rams put up 25 points? That's the question for me this week. Could they get up to 25 points on the day? And could they give San Francisco a game? Now, the odds are probably heavily stacked against them. But for me, that is one of the most intriguing storylines this week, because if they can get out early and get on the ball and get that ball down the field and give it to Williams, give it to Nakua, Never mind just the other guys they have. The fact that their defense literally stopped Seattle was it completely in the second half. They didn't allow a single first down the whole second half. Like that is unbelievable to go into Seattle and completely shut out a defense like that, especially when they weren't in a great position at halftime. So for that defense to go out and perform like that, they've got leaders on it. We don't know how long Aaron Donald's going to be in LA for. I just feel like if you're looking at having an upset this week, why couldn't the Rams do it? Because certainly nobody gave them the chance last week when in Seattle. Well, let's see how they get on against another NFC West team this Sunday. I'm buzzing to watch that game.
It's super interesting, Michael, because like we didn't believe in the Seahawks for so long last year, but there was no reason that their defense would take a step back. And I don't know, they kind of just they were shell shocked at that game. I can't imagine they were underestimated. And when you talk about my power rankings, I put it down to Sean McVay. Like it was talked about last year that he was probably like it was a weird Super Bowl hangover where he didn't know did he love the game or not that he didn't love the game, but like everyone was like he just
Mm.
needed a year off and that passion into like yeah he was a mastermind that like just didn't act last year it seems, but like to be getting what he got out of even Tutu Atwell, who he's wanted to star for ages. Like you couldn't with Cooper Cup, you couldn't pick the Rams last week. I think it'll be a different story against the 49ers because like their defense was insane against the Steelers. And it's like that wasn't even the talking point. It was the offense. So I mean, these things do happen. That's why it's going to be interesting to see can the Rams back up. And it's especially interesting because something we'll talk about a bit later on. If the Rams are poor, they might want to trade Matt Ryan because the Jets will give them a bit of a haul for it. But if they start to play well and they go and follow the same script that the Seahawks went last year, remember this time last year, the Seahawks were number 32 in the power rankings and everyone thought they were awful. And then they just showed up. And I suppose the other thing is like we star players become star players when the team starts to win. So on that Rams defense, everyone's like, well, they got rid of any of the decent talent that they kind of accumulated over the years, and the only names aren't Donald. We will get to know the names because we will start to watch them make plays. They just haven't had the chance yet because, like, yeah, they've been second tier guys behind the likes of Leonard Floyd's and all these who've moved on. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see can they back it up. I feel like they're less likely, certainly than the Dolphins, to be
Oh
explosive.
yeah,
But like, I mean, it's a different tier we're talking about here. I mean, can the Rams hang around with those middle tier teams? That's what we want to see now. We don't expect them to be going for a number one seed, like I'm kind of talking about with the Dolphins.
I certainly don't either, but it would be really intriguing if they took them close
And
because
in that
that makes you
NFC,
change your expectations.
like that number 7 spot is kind of like wide open.
Matthew Stafford also could be interesting.
He's a
I want
phenomenal.
to.
He's a phenomenal quarterback. Always has been. Went under the radar just because they didn't have a ton of weapons this year, and it was talked about. It's like why are people so low on Matthew Stafford because he is insane. He can make anyone play better.
Time will tell. We've looked at teams. Let's look at players. Let's look at a non-quarterback player that we'll be looking at this week, following a big week one. And I'll maybe stay very quickly, Mark, on the Rams. When you've got a running back room with Cam Akers, and Cam Akers is meant to be the lead back, 29 yards, 22 carries. You've got Kyron Williams there that was far more effective last week, 15 carries, 52 yards, far more productive on the ball. McVay clearly, clearly has faith in him. And you could see a situation this week where against the Niners, if they do need to really rely on that run game, where they're on the ground, they're splitting the reps between Akers and Kyron Williams. And I could see Williams having a 80, 90, 100 yard rush day, 2 to 3 receiving touchdowns easily. Easily. And this is
Easy,
the big
wow,
if.
against that defense.
It, this is the big if. You mentioned Tutu. You mentioned Paco. I can't pronounce it. I'm gonna have to learn his name. I'm gonna write his name on this. I'm gonna whiteboard. I'm gonna write the name on the whiteboard for next week. But like Albert Okwuegbunam, I say easy like this. If the Rams get down inside the red zone against this Niners defense, they'll have got there for a reason. With Stafford getting 200 to 300 yards in the day. If that situation is a bell cow where you've got Akers and you've got Williams, you split and you mix and match, and they'll get scores on the day. There's no reason why the Niners won't give up points. I think there'll be situations in this game where Stafford will have windows, and it'll be about McVay managing this game in the best way he can. And I I've got a really stupid feeling that the Rams are going to go out and put 14 and 21 points up on the rush. Now they might not win the game, but I could see a guy like Kyron Williams having a good day, and it just depends. I mean, do you want to give me your name? Because I've got another one, but if you want to give me yours first, go for it.
Well, do you know, just piggybacking on that point, I think why they won't get the rushing numbers is because I'd highlight, I don't know if I ever was talking about it out loud, I guess, on the podcast, but like, that's right. Going back to the free agency podcast, I
Mm,
said that Seattle had to re-sign Puna Ford because as bad as their defensive line was last year against the run, at least Puna Ford is this massive man that can help against the run. They didn't keep him. He's with Buffalo now. So they have a glaring hole there. And I think the teams will be able to run on them all over for, I suppose, for the foreseeable until we see that no one can run over them.
mm.
So I think that that's the difference. Whereas, like, obviously the 49ers went off and got Javon Hargrave in free agency and he was fantastic on the weekend. So, I mean, that's the difference for me why it won't happen again. But anyway, we'll see. And that's not to just counter your point, but I think just from
No,
a
you're right. I
free.
mean, like there is a very valid argument for why it won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to think outside the box and trying to think of a situation where it's a Rams home opener. Granted, it'd be 30 to 40 to 50,000 Niners fans there, but the Niners fans are expectant to the point where they expect greatness this week. So it might not happen early in the game, and if the Rams can jump on that early on, and if McVay can find some sort of master plan and somehow go 2-0, we're looking at a very interesting season. We'll see.
Well, it's funny because the guy that I picked is going to be involved in that game as well, and I just want to see how Brandon Ayuk does. Now, first of
Mm.
all, when I said the London games earlier on, the London games are so close now that I was influenced. I wanted to talk Calvin Ridley, but I said, you know what, no, I'll go because we're probably going to talk a lot of Calvin Ridley in the build up to London, or certainly the week off because we're going to have 2 weeks off him. But Brandon Ayuk is a guy that is flash talent. Last year, he had a career year. He had his first 1,000 yard um, season. He went 78 yards and he had 8 touchdowns. He had 2 on the weekend, but again, they were phenomenal touchdowns. He for his first touchdown, he kind of like goes out to the right but pulls back left and gets like massive separation. That wasn't quite an ankle breaker on Patrick Peterson, but certainly made him look completely foolish. And then the second touchdown, again, he's on Patrick Peterson. It was a lovely thrown ball, but the two, himself and Peterson, like are hand fighting, but the strength of Brandon Ayuk to turn around and get it, you're thinking, oh, like everyone talks about him second to Christian McCaffrey, but if he can complement and he is already kind of a star player, I know, in terms of fantasy. Although I was able to nab him in our own draft kind of late, which I was laughing at, but he was phenomenal on the weekend. Now you can say, okay, yeah, it was Patrick Peterson, who I don't rate anymore. Joey Porter Jr. was in the Steelers defensive back unit. It was his rookie game. So like, what is that? But like all 8 targets Brandon Ayuk brought in, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like I said, he looked absolutely phenomenal. And you're kind of thinking if Brock Purdy and this offense is as good as we expect them to be, it's like this could be an all-pro year for the guy.
Yeah, I agree. And Purdy is that's a whole different conversation. Like because we haven't talked about this, but I spoke to Connor about this. He looked like a different player in such a good way. He looked like a guy that done an Aaron Rodgers and sat in the dark room. Anywho, let's look at the Falcons, a team that don't get enough love in these podcasts at the minute, based because there's too many things to talk about, so little time. Falcons are playing the Packers this week. In shout out Dan Whelan's first home game in the regular season in the NFL. Whoop whoop, Donaboo.
Hey, do
Now
you know what? I'm going to jump in with the Dan Whelan thing because the NFL announced that every team is going to get an extra
yes,
international pathway. And I want to say, I think, and genuinely, I mean this, I think Ireland has made so much noise that they see what getting an international player does to community. I'm not saying it's purely marketing, but I do think that it might have a slight part to play in their like, whoa, this
mm,
has so much coverage for the league. The Irish Times, RTE, they're all covering it over here. And
I agree.
even the BBC are writing about an Irish player. And I think that, look, these things don't just happen overnight. It's not like, that the tweets and graphics and all this were put out a week ago on this. Okay, that's it. But I think that the NFL means it a lot when they say that they hear us. And I was just like, I think it played a small role. Maybe I'm mad, Michael.
So we're recording this on a Wednesday night, and I was chatting to Ty leader earlier on, and they're having a he's having a sort of a combine. I'm not sure if I can announce too much about this yet, but he's having what he would call a combine, and some of those players will go to London and try out for the academy or try out for the IPP, which is a big shift, and that shows. So you're spot on. I think also there has been a big shift in the league office. I don't think that we were in the position that we are now 3 or 4 years ago, certainly. So I think there's many different factors. I think we're all very fortunate we're in this at the right time, thank God. And yeah, we just wish the players that go the very, very best luck. I have no doubt that there'll be many GA players, especially and rugby players, that try and make that move. And I've no doubt whenever Johnny lifts the Rugby World Cup in 6.5 weeks that he'll then be looking at kicking as well. So we'll see what happens. I was joking the other night. I think I said it to either Connor or Michaela, but I was like, there'll be no podcast for a while after we win that. That's all I'm gonna say. Um, let's stay on this topic because I've got another player, and when everyone talks about the Falcons, they think about Bijan, yeah, and he had a great Jesus, what a debut! Like, oh my Christ! Now his head coach Arthur Smith is a guy that does tend to, since his days as he was the OC in Tennessee, to rely on the run. Well, I'll give you Tyler Algier. Desmond Ritter had 18 passes in last week's game against the Colts, and the Falcons ran the ball 26 times, and you would have thought the Bijan was given the most on the day. Tyler Algier had 15 carries, 2 touchdowns, 75 yards on the day. And I think when you've got that combination now going into week 2 in Green Bay with Bijan, with Tyler Algier, never mind the RB3, RB4 situation in Atlanta, I think Atlanta could have a serious threat in the run game in what you said, Mark, the NFC. The NFC is such a question mark this year. And if they can get that right, where they have Algier's ceiling and they allow also Bijan to get the reps that he needs to improve, I think Algier could be a real X factor for the Falcons going down the stretch. And I'm buzzing to watch his run game on Sunday.
You're dead right, because Bijan Robinson was obviously brought in this year, and we're kind of saying, "Oh, what's the impact that he can have?" And I absolutely expect him to have a greater and greater role as the year goes on. But when you talk about Tyler Algier, he was obviously there last year and looked phenomenally well. But what you have to put stock in is Arthur Smith has been there, what, 3 years now? They've been building up that O line for 3 years. The likes of Caleb McGarry might have been called a bust in the beginning, but they're
And he's had
not.
his challenges in 3 years, There's been
Yeah,
times in
yeah,
three
that's
years where
it.
it's
Like,
been really down.
you're dead right, and it's kind of I'm gonna give you a sneak peek. We might talk about the Patriots in a minute, but like, he was working away on things that he needed to get done. And when you get a new head coach in, it's like year 3, you have to perform. I've said that a million times in the podcast, and it's like, yeah, now it's like he's been able to tinker and put products in place. And it's a long-term build, a 3-year project. But this is when it starts to pay off. And he has set up the run game that he came, if people aren't aware, he came from that Tennessee background where Derrick Henry was a better player 3 years ago under Arthur Smith. His those couple of years, I put out a stat during the off season, his last 2 years, and those would have been the ones without Arthur Smith, he's averaging 4.5 yards a carry. The 2 years before that, with Arthur Smith, he was at 5.5 yards a carry. So it's like Arthur Smith runs a mean run game, and I think you're right now. Equally, those couple of touchdowns, I felt like Bijan Robinson might feel a bit hard done by, because he was kind of pulled from the game anytime they got into the red zone, it seemed. That's when I was watching, at least. But yeah, no, Tyler Algier, it's going to be a 1-2 punch, and we've seen how deadly those kind of setups have been for other teams the last few years, whether that's Green Bay or otherwise.
Let's see how some players get on in week 2, and not just week 2. I'm sure we'll look at this topic and come back to this at some point throughout the next 16 to 18 weeks before we take our season slumber on February the 13th, 2024. More than a box score. Let's break down some plays. I know you want to talk about the Patriots. I'm going to talk about the Steelers in a second, not because I am now Mr. Pittsburgh to some people, hence the Shamrock coffee mug. I feel like Kenny Pickett's getting too much hate, but I think you want to talk about the Patriots very quickly as well.
I do. I think it's absolutely crazy when I'm kind of looking at NFL stuff Monday morning, and I see comment. Oh, one did me. It was by Miami. It was in the Miami Palm Springs Times or something. I don't know what it's called. And they're saying that the
The Palm
Patriots.
Springs Times.
I'm pulling that off the top of my head. I don't know what it's called. And The Sun Continental, I think, is their local paper. It's like blocked from the EU, so like, we can never use it. But anyway, the whatever I was reading, they say that the Patriots had a below average performance, and I'm like, what are you talking about? The Patriots this week, the first three plays, the first three drives by the Philadelphia Eagles, it was like a field goal. Then Mac Jones, no, then Ezekiel Elliott fumbles, giving them a 25-yard touchdown. And then there's a 70-yard interception by Darius Slay, returned for a touchdown. So the offense gave incredible starting field position to the Patriots offense or to the Eagles offense. So one of the most potent attacks last year was gifted a 16-0 start. For the final 47 minutes of the game, the Eagles, the Super Bowl contender from the NFC last year, scored 9 points. The New England Patriots defense is going to be class this year. They have an absolutely savage defensive backs room. Christian Gonzalez showed in his first game that he can line up with anyone. Like, I mean, obviously there's going to be growing pains, but he looked fantastic. And they have big-bodied defensive backs that are going to make it difficult for the likes of Miami this week to match up with them. So I'm super interested to see how they go. Christian Gonzalez got a sack off a corner blitz. Josh Uche and Matthew Judon, who I've talked to death about during the offseason, about like they could be one of the best pass rush duos. They both get a sack on the day against that Eagles offense that is absolutely incredible. So it's like Bill Belichick, when we actually fast forward into this week's game, he hasn't won against Tua yet. So you can imagine a mastermind like Bill Belichick, who would have had all offseason to focus so harshly on divisional games, is going to have figured out the Dolphins, not figured them out, but it's like he could put a blueprint in place, because we know that's what he does against so many teams. I'm reading a book at the moment all about him, and it's kind of like he really, really emphasizes on the divisional opponents. He will have scouts picking them apart. And when we saw Miami this weekend, that they are really focusing on that pass game still, and they're yet to develop the run game. Now, don't get me wrong, the Patriots defense is really set up fantastically against the run, but that's why they have those big defensive back units. I think that if he's able to say, well, they're not able to run the ball, Miami will encourage them to run the ball. That's what he did against Peyton Manning back in the day. It's like, we'll just take away. Well, he had a game plan against the Colts back in the day where he said, if we are able to build a lead against them, we will rush one man and we'll have only linebackers and defensive backs on the field, and that's how we're going to play. He could try that against the Miami Dolphins this week, being like, okay, we dare you to throw against like all of our defenders back here, because if they try and they'll get frustrated and they'll try and run the ball, and Miami hasn't shown us yet that they have that established.
There's so many things to pull off there, like, and just talk about. And I feel like a general discussion point in itself could have been that game on Sunday Night Football between the Dolphins and the Patriots, because that's going one of two ways. That is going slugfest. Patriots stop Miami. Miami can't get a game going, or it could be a cricket score. And the thing that really surprised me on Sunday was just in week one was the Philadelphia Eagles allowed the Patriots to come back into that game. And it was like, lads, do you want to hand the game to them? Do you want to like find a way just to give them the win here? Because it's like after the first quarter, the Eagles were up by 14 zip, and you're like,
First
this
quarter,
shouldn't
16-0.
16,
16-0.
16 zip, and it's like it shouldn't be happening. And obviously, like Judon had a great game, but for me, like there would have been multiple teams in that position against the Eagles in the league that if they were given the ball with 5.5 minutes to go, they would have got over the line and won the game by 1 to 2 to 3 points in the situation that New England were in. And I don't feel that Stevenson or Kendrick Bourne are going to be of the caliber needed to get what I am now considering a mid to mediocre quarterback in Mac Jones over the line this season. I don't believe that Bill Belichick, as a mastermind as he's being described, and he is a mastermind. What Bill Belichick has done is he's changed the league. He's changed the way that people view the sport of football, and he's created history in the process of that. Some legendary teams, legendary players that we'll never forget about, and he'll be looked on forever. 2 to 500 years time, people will talk about Bill Belichick and what he done in this league. Well, he hasn't had a quarterback for the last 3.5 years. What is going on? You can be a mastermind, but something has to give at this point. He needs to find a way to develop a quarterback, and he needs to
Do you
find a
know what
way to
though,
say like
Michael?
I don't think if he's right, then like he
I,
needs
I
to admit to if he's wrong, he's wrong. He needs to move on. Like why are they sitting with Mac Jones this year?
Do you know what
It
though? I suppose that's not even the conversation that I'm having. It's like that's what
yeah
I
yeah
want people to know, that the Patriots defense is not a problem. That Belichick has been putting this thing in place. 97 yards is what they gave up against the Eagles run game. Like that was a calling card for the Eagles last year, and it's like they completely stymied it last year. So it's like I suppose that's the whole thing. Belichick has never been able to hit on a wide receiver. He always had a quarterback there. Quarterbacks aren't easy to have. But I
mm.
think like people are just looking at Mac Jones and they're looking at the wide receiver core. Kendrick Bourne was fantastic on the weekend, and that's a really good Eagles defense. I think that's why people look at the score and you get that guy from Miami saying they played below average. I don't think they did. I thought the defense was fantastic. I think that the offense was as good as it was going to be against that team. I think that this whole thing of dismissing the Patriots just because of Mac Jones, it's like football is so much more than that. And it's like
Oh yeah, like
watching this defense battle out against other top offenses, I think is going to be exciting this year.
well yeah, of course it could be exciting. And look, I agree with you. I just feel that I'm not I'm not solely putting the blame back on Mac Jones or looking at the box score, looking at certain players and yardage. Like I just feel like they're a level behind where they need to be. I feel like you can have 80, 90 yards on the day like Bourne had, but there was elements of his game and there was elements of the offense generally where they just couldn't get over the line or get the job finished, especially towards the end of the game. And it's like, well, when is that going to give? Is that going to give 6 weeks down the line when it's too late in the AFC East? Is it going to give it all? And it's something that we're going to watch over the next few weeks. But certainly, it's not just Mac Jones for me. It just feels like, but for the offense, he is the nucleus at the center and he needs to find a way to improve his game more. That's a different discussion. But I do feel like the Patriots are a level under where they need to be on the offense side of the ball. They did exceed expectations for me, especially in the third and fourth quarters on Sunday. And I guess it's what they look like this Sunday against Miami. Do they go into Miami? It's a home game on Sunday as well. Do they go in and do they find a way where Miami take an early lead? I think that completely changes the whole conversation. I think Miami pull away immediately. If the Patriots can go in and have their defense, which you've said yourself is that good, and it's a great defense. If they can find a way to stop Tua finding space, getting passes down the field, and make them run the ball, make them feel uncomfortable, it'll be a great game. And can I just add in before I say about a different player? Can I just add in and say that I feel like we need to have a camera on Vic Fangio, like you press red, and you can just watch Vic for the whole game. That's what I'd like to see. You're talking about like newspapers and about articles. Um, I need to watch what I say here. I sat back on Tuesday and watched about 3/4 of the game between the Steelers and the Niners. And yes, there was a considerable amount of situations when Kenny Pickett, if you watched Kenny when he was with Pitt or earlier on in the season, he always looked a lot more comfortable when he was sort of under pressure or out of what he would be used to in terms of the structure or within the pocket. And in January, when the league was coming to an end last year and he was starting to develop his game more, he went and played the Ravens and he just balled out. He showed slight signs of having that and taking it to the next level on 3 different plays against San Francisco. But the problem with everything else is every other play was absolute trash. He looked so unconfident. He really struggled. And I was just really surprised at how much he struggled when he was given. Like I haven't got like the time between the ball snapping and Kenny getting the pass out in front of me, but there was plays where he had a considerable amount of time. I think back to the 4-from-4 play when they really needed to get a score on the board in the third quarter on Sunday, and it was as if he just threw it away without thinking. Almost, it's hard. Like I feel like I need a camera on his helmet to look at what he was doing, but he looked so unconfident. And this is where we're going into the first topic of conversation that we had at the start of this, and it was like, well, this is such a big game on Sunday. What Kenny Pickett are we going to see? We're going to see the Kenny Pickett that we've seen in December, January, being more confident, having maybe a few more play action plays. Are we going to see him try and utilize guys like Deontay Johnson, or are we going to see a team with Pittsburgh that's got a hell of a defense struggle with a younger quarterback. And it's not the same sort of comparisons to Mac Jones because Jones is developing and he's in his third year in the league. But Kenny, certainly for me, I was surprised at looking. I was surprised at some of the plays, but I was also surprised to run into a different player. I was surprised that, granted, it was a Niners defense, Mark, and how little Najee could get on the day at the run game as well. So there's a few things there. Like that's I feel like we should get like 15 people for Pro Football Ireland, and we're like, right, you watch this game, you watch this game, you watch this game, you watch this game. I actually enjoyed sitting down with 3 quarters of a bottle of Corona and just watching the game on Tuesday night. So it was great to have football back, but it's definitely something that I'd be concerned about if I'm in Pittsburgh because he just doesn't look confident, and that could be hard to get back so quickly, you know.
Yeah, I suppose there's so much early season tropes that you don't want to fall into. That like it was one game. I'm not going to thank any team really after one game. I suppose my concern going into the year is that George Pickens, yeah, he has a massive catch radius, but it's a lot of highlight plays. But yeah, I think that the offense is still getting going. And we saw that fantastic final 9 games of Kenny Pickett, and that's why everyone was really excited to see him going into the year. He was great under pressure last year, but when he was coming out of college, it was supposed to be that he's a real cerebral quarterback and that he was supposed to be a fantastic processor and all like this. And we haven't been able to see that yet. Him just
Mm.
thrive in what we expected him to do really well. And that was just to make smart decisions. So, I'm still waiting to see that. But, we know from his college game that that's why he was the only first round draft pick of last year, that he has that to it. It's just, not that it hasn't been called on yet. He definitely has it. It's just, between broken plays and stuff like that, we haven't been able to see it.
I challenge you this week to watch the Indianapolis Houston tape on Monday. It'll be fun. Um, Actually, no, I challenge you to watch the Cardinals against the Giants. That's let's not even talk about that. That could be a whole different thing.
Oh,
Let's look ahead the week two. Let's have a bit of fun. What's going to be the biggest headline on Monday morning after week two? And let me jump in first here. Short and sweet. Did you watch the Jaguars last week? Oh my Christ. Like they looked like a team possessed. Like think back to what they were like in London last year against Denver and the run that they went on and the confidence that Lawrence got in himself. The run game with Travis Etienne, Calvin Ridley looks superb. We haven't even mentioned Christian Kirk. And I just feel like home opener, Kansas City. Kansas City potentially sans Kelsey, depending on the time of recording. He is not confirmed yet, but they're going to monitor it over the next few days. I'd be very wary, Mark, in terms of what his fitness level's like, and I feel like they're not going to give too much away. But I certainly feel for the Chiefs, if he's not 100% or not 90%, he does not start. He does not play. They should not be playing him on Sunday. They need to give him time. They're going to need him down the stretch. They're a hell of a football team. I think the storyline on Monday morning is going to be Kansas City 0-2.
oh,
I think the Jags are going to win. Wait for it.
oh.
I think we're going to see a game offensively a little bit like the game that we've seen in LA on Sunday. I think this is going to be game of the week by a country mile. I am buzzing for this game. Kansas City against Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence puts down a marker on the league. The Jags go 2-0 and the Chiefs go 0-2. And my God, that'll be a good morning football segment. Kyle Branson, my bad books in a minute.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, there were some people that had the Jags as number 1 seed going into the year, and it's one of those things that if it were to happen, we would say, "Oh yeah, obviously it were to happen." But like week 2, let's cut up the highlight, being like, "Whoa, that's insane to think." I mean, yeah, the talent is absolutely there, but I don't think it was a completely clean show. Like the Colts hung in there for quite a while. It wasn't until Anthony Richardson really made a horrible interception towards the end of the game that it was completely closed out. Obviously, the Calvin Ridley to uh, or from Trevor Lawrence was fantastic during the week.
Mm.
But I love. I'm super excited for the Jags. They're such an inoffensive team, especially now that they're being marketed in Ireland. We can look at them quite fondly. That yeah, it'd be fantastic if they're doing well. If the Chiefs go 0-2, and I mean, I'll skip to what my headline was going to be. I didn't think that it was going to tie into the Kansas City Chiefs, but absolutely there is going to be a team, whether it's the Chiefs or someone else like the Steelers, that people had going to the playoffs. The storyline on Monday morning is the 0-2 teams, and they're going to throw out the same stat that they do each year. And we're going to talk about it because I've already put it into the notes for week 3 show about which team is going to be able to save their season and be able to go 1-2, because if you go 0-3, it's going to be an absolute disaster. But the Kansas City Chiefs, if they go 0-2, but then the funny thing is with it, we were talking about how tight that race is going to be in the AFC. But it's like, yeah, if you're going to just give the Jets, I mean, the Jets an O on their game. I haven't even looked at their schedule. You'll have to tell me again who the Jets are
Dallas,
playing.
like that is like they're playing Dallas
Dallas, I
next
mean,
week.
give me a break. Dallas have to win that one. Like, that's insane.
Oh,
But like,
like
the Jets are going to
not
be
to shout out
0-2.
our dear sponsors, who we have got Tyrone All Ireland style bunting at the moment, but 888 Sports, 18 plus, be gamble aware. Not to shout them out, but the odds, Mark, because I done the PFI Picks podcast, which drops on Friday morning with Michaela, and I want to say they're maybe like 9-2. They're quite high. They might not be 9-2. I'll
Sorry,
get back to you
I
on that.
thought you were about to say that it was a 9-point spread. And I was like, wait, that's
The
outrageous.
spread,
But
the spread is big.
it
It
could
might
be
be nine and
quite
a half
big.
points. I'll tell you
Oh,
right now, it's big, and there's an interesting bet. Like not that we're going to start talking about betting in this podcast, but I think they'll struggle, the Jets, on Sunday, to say the least. But I feel like it'll be a situation where the Cowboys go out and put a marker down very early. Yeah, it's a 9.5 point spread. They're 17-5, so the Cowboys are very much favorites, 2-9 on for this
and
game.
another
A
team
nine and a half spread.
and a team I'll throw in there as well. It's like the Bills, obviously, like I said, they had a horrible performance. Like, how do you go out and lose? Look, the Jets defense is phenomenal. The Bills defense was also phenomenal. A team that's going in hot this weekend is the Las Vegas Raiders. They're going playing the Buffalo Bills, and somehow that's a 9.5 point game in the Bills' favor. I don't see it, even though it is going to be up in Buffalo.
Shout
But
out to
no,
Trev.
just going hey Trev, and it's like, yeah, no, it is like one of those games that the Bills should not be in the place that they are right now after this absolutely crazy um
Do you want to hear a
game.
secret?
Yeah,
I went to bed at halftime on Monday night, and I woke up and I had to watch the second half before I went to work. I was like, "Are you kidding me? Really, really?" So, what team are you saying before we just jump on to our last discussion point?
what team was I saying? How do you mean? I mean,
I'll go one further while you wait. Bengals 0-2. The Bengals are losing to the Ravens this week.
right, so that was also going to be my talking point if I had to give a second one out, was what is the Bengal season? And that's why I tied in with the 0-2. I didn't want to completely tie it in because I didn't know we could go 1 or 2 here.
But
There's
like
our
that's
planning.
like, man, like the Ravens, like for them to run, like to them to go into Cincinnati. Never mind the fact last week
No,
that
the
the Ravens
Cleveland,
didn't have
the
Mark
Browns, the
Andrews
Browns.
and won. Like that's a big,
No, the
like, you know.
Browns, the Browns.
Oh
Who are
yeah,
you saying?
I'm saying, so like the Bengals played Cleveland last week and lost, but for the Ravens to go in this week to
Oh,
Cincinnati,
sorry, of course.
and
Yeah.
like that could be a huge statement. Like that could be a massive. If Joe Burrow has the similar game stats wise to he had last week, and if Baltimore win, and we see that next sort of elevation of Zay Flowers, Odell getting on the ball, and if Mark Andrews doesn't play again, and Lamar still gets a result out of that offense, I think that is a huge storyline. And I could see a realistic situation where both the Cincinnati and Kansas City are 0-2 on Monday morning, which would
I
be
think
crazy.
with Cincinnati again, it's the same trap as we were talking about earlier on. But like, the Cleveland Browns have that phenomenal defense that I think can project or can pull them to the top of the AFC North this year. Cincinnati had to play that this week, and a lot of people are not aware of how good that defense is, and they found out all about it. That I think, for me, obviously now you have the starting running back for the Ravens, whose name goes beyond me right now.
Zay Flowers, no?
No, the running back, J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is on
Dobbins, yeah.
IR, so we're gonna have to figure out what
Oh,
they're doing
running
with.
back, my bad, my bad, my
Yeah,
bad, my
we have
bad.
to see what they do. Is it Justice Hill, or Gus Edwards? We just have to figure out what happens there. But I suppose, like, I wasn't completely blown away by the Ravens pass game the other day. I think there's a lot to figure out there still. Like, I mean, yeah, I have to, I look, Odell, like, there's a lot to figure out. They're playing the Houston Texans, and I know D'Amico Ryans is supposed to be a defensive mastermind, but let's give him a bit of time to figure it all out. Like it was the Texans. I don't think I moved them in my power rankings. Maybe I did just as a result of other results, but
Every
like
Tuesday
they should
morning,
have.
folks.
They should have, yeah. If it wasn't for that, oh my God, Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, let's transition into the Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, hold on. You talking about the Ravens? Did you hear about John Harbaugh, about his brother Jim? What's going on with him at the minute?
I know that it's a
This
suspension.
is good crack. So he's suspended because he took lads bowling, but he's basically like holding the chains at high school games at the weekends at the minute. And the Michigan team are like doing like minute silences and all, and they're like getting in all these like weird formations to pay tribute as if he's dead. So why not this weekend? Why couldn't Jim just stand on the touchline this weekend and like cheer people on instead? Like just surreal. Anyway, college football podcast drops every Thursday. There's the generic hit. I'm really enjoying doing that. Like it's great. Like those lads are great cracks. So certainly looking forward to it as my AirPod falls out of my ear, and you can make the lovely transition into our final segment now, Mark.
No, it's funny because you talked about falling asleep there, and I tell you, I had a completely different experience. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and I turn over
Oh, it's
to
still on.
I see text from you. No, the game. So this is what's so funny about waking up at that time. It's usually ended about 20 minutes. So like, if you actually Google it, you're probably still getting like the ends of updates. But I have a text from you that says like, "Man, I hope your notifications off, but I'm about to blow up your phone." and I
Is
just
this Rogers?
and I see like these texts about like it's just a complete mess. Your sentences weren't even making sense. It's just like Rogers ankle season over. It's like, what is
I
going
I
on?
literally like I got to the point where it was like, well, props to Michaela for coming on and chatting, and that podcast is on the network. It was good crack. But I was like at the point, and I think I said it to you. I was like we're gonna have to do a podcast at 6:30 in the morning here. Like we
That's it.
can't
It's
not
like
talk
it's
about
like
this.
I'm getting a text about, can you go from the office and do a podcast? We need to talk about this. This is outrageous. And I'm so it's like the snooze button
Never
is
mind the
now.
fact that we've got a guy on the East Coast that was awake watching the game
Oh,
who was
stop.
dying to talk about it. So sorry, Connor. But yeah, go on ahead. Go on ahead.
So I'm like, the snooze button is now forgotten about. I have to get my like affairs in order. I'm googling, being like, what is after going on with Aaron Rodgers? I didn't even check the score. I presume that they've lost the game, and it's like I see that an hour later. I'm trying to look for some podcasts, but again, it's too early, so we weren't able to. I wasn't able to get any kind of content. But I was just like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers after doing his Achilles. It was like literally 6 hours later before I saw that outrageous Garrett Wilson catch. But yeah,
Oh,
no, it was, look, it's just
oof.
so funny how I experienced this. We're gonna have a guy on in a while, and we're gonna ask about how he experienced it. But it's like, from my experience, it was just this haze of when you're waking up and you don't know what's going on. But I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my God. I remember when Carson Palmer in London broke his shoulder. It was his last ever game. It was in London. They lost 33-0. I was waiting at a bus stop, and I felt so depressed, and that was like a Cardinals team that was going nowhere. And I was like, oh my God, how quick was this in the game? Four snaps, four snaps. First of all, I thought it was 4 minutes in, and then I thought it was four snaps. And I was thinking, oh, those poor Jets. Sorry, what are we doing here? This isn't analytical at all. Why are we
Well, like no, you're right.
rehashing?
Like I think just to wrap on that, I think we'll look back in 20 years. That was such a devastating moment for them. You think of
and
everything that
and
happened. Like this is dramatic, and we are going to talk about it with our guest in a few minutes. Very quickly, Mark, stick or twist, stick or change. I don't like stick or twist. It's a weird name. Do you believe in any of your bold predictions / Super Bowl picks? Now, my Super Bowl pick was the Eagles to beat the Jets in our heavily expensive edited 4K video from a live show that we done twice. So I can't say that anymore. But I tell you what, Marcus, I'm sitting on Sunday, and I've said on every podcast this week, so I'll just repeat it here. I put on Red Zone up the M1. You know yourself, you're in a half decent modern car, so the car makes a noise if you're not going straight. So I'm looking up and down, looking up and down, looking up and down at every plane Red Zone legally. I was very safe on my driving. So I watched, I seen a very good chunk of the first 3 quarters of the late window, and I got in with about 5 minutes to go. So got up in good time, and shout out to the M1 and the dual carriageway up the Newry boys. And I seen a lot of the Packers game, and my sweet mother of mercy, they are in for a treat with Mr. Jordan Love. I'm gonna stick with my prediction, I'm going to take a team that was 5-1 at one point with 888 and other betting partners as well, or betting sponsors, or betting companies, because no other betting people sponsor us 18 plus. Be gamble aware. I'm going to take the Packers to win the NFC North. I think, you look at the way that Rodgers left Green Bay and the situation that Green Bay is now in. You've seen glimpses of the way that Rodgers played and how Jordan Love sort of went through his plays on Sunday. Jordan Love looked like a guy that sat with a notepad that he needed to fill every day. And by God, he'd done it. And we're one game in and we're overreacting. I'll take the Packers to win the North. I will. And I think it'll be close between the Lions, but I think the Green Bay Packers win the North. And if they win the North, Matt LaFleur should never be sacked. Ever. Because it's genius that happens. But Jordan Love looks great, and I guess I will stick with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. And we're not going to talk about this again, but it's stick after 1 week. You got a chance to go out of it. I think the Eagles win the Super Bowl, 100%. I think the Niners will be dead and buried come the third week in January.
I am completely opposed to overreacting off week one, but I will say I think
Do it for the cracks. It's only about the cracks, sir.
I think that the Packers is a team that I had them higher in the power rankings than the Bears. I have them win the division. The reason I picked against them was because Watson was out, and because it was so late, I was like, oh, what's going to go on here? But like, absolutely,
Yeah.
we talked about like Matt LaFleur from the Aviva Stadium saying like he gets the keys to his car back, and he should be very good. Like, he was held hostage by Rodgers somewhat with his offense and his play calling. Romeo Dobbs now, I suppose, like, look, it's so funny. Christian Watson could be a fantastic player, but like he has massive injury concerns now. He is missing stints at a time now, whether it's last year in the preseason, then he immediately, like a couple of weeks in last year, gets injured. Then he came back, got injured again. And now he starts this season off injured again. He has, for what was he? He was a second round pick, wasn't it? Or was it a like he definitely has
Second, I
injury
think.
concerns now. So it's like now I'm like I can't base anything off him, any projections, which I did during we talked about him in our Dublin show, and I said like this was a concern for him whether he can stay healthy. I do think that the Packers can be very good because of Matt LaFleur, but the Christian Watson, I think we need to pump the brakes and let's see him stay healthy and deliver, which I don't know if he's going to be able to do.
Well, are you going to pump the brakes on, finally, are you going to pump the brakes on your AFC North prediction?
I think, look, not if you really want me to toot my horn, which this whole segment is
Toot,
about.
toot.
I
Have we
was
got a horn noise in this? Hold on. Have we got a horn noise? Okay, Mark, are you going to stick with your AFC North pick?
no, I will stay with my AFC North pick, but I suppose, look, I went 12-4 in the picks this week, and the only ones that I missed on were the Rams beating the Vikings, the Packers losing to the Bears. I've explained myself there. The Rams, the Packers, the Bucks, and the Chiefs were my picks. It's like no one was picking against me on those except for yourself on the Packers. I went 12-4. Am I happy with the knowledge that I brought up throughout the offseason delivering in week one? Yeah, absolutely. I am. I nailed it.
Oh God. Okay.
If that's the reel that you came here for, there you go. I nailed it. That's what I did.
There we go. I feel like looking back last week, I was a wee bit too out there with some of my picks, but I'll recover this week, and I
We
firmly
all beat the
believe
bookies. We all beat
I
and
well.
that's no easy thing to do because like I know I beat it 2 years ago over the course of a season, and last year I was behind them. But it's
Did you
phenomenally
ever see the
tricky.
week where I was with a former outlet and I got every game bar one right? Did you ever see that?
I've
You
had
you
this.
you
I did.
you were
I did
making
it
the
2 years ago.
graphics.
I did
Yeah,
it. I
so I
did
mean,
it two
like,
years ago. Don't worry
did you
about
see
it.
the week where it was
It's
like
cool to do. It's
every
cool to
bloody
do.
game apart from like the very last one was right, and it was like, oh my God,
Yeah, it's not.
how
It's
the
not easy
hell?
to do. It's not at all easy to do, especially when you're doing it in a format where you're going up against other people. But it's like, yeah, it's fun too. But it's also eye opening when you track it over the course of the season how even you'll be. And yeah, like I said, just how hard it is to kind of beat a sport because they, just I don't know those guys that get fancy degrees. What's it, actuary? Our main man there, Dara, does the
Actuarial
same thing.
studies. Shout out to my wife that's just opened the door and said hello to me. So hello. Actuarial studies. Okay, in the last segment in our show, we're going to bring on a guest. We've never done this in the previous show before. It's going to be interesting. I believe this guy is a meme master, a musician, and a nickname extraordinaire. Many nicknames given to him. Great Hanzini, Danger, the list goes on. Kevin in New York. Big welcome to you, Kevin. How you doing, man? You
What's
good?
up, guys? Thanks for having me on here. I wish it
There's a
was
back
under better circumstances, but here we are.
There's a backstory to it. Kevin's a buddy of mine, and I knew that he was in the bar the other day. And during our podcast, we were talking about the reaction from our point of view, which is kind of this whimsical, oh, like, can you believe it? The sky is falling. For you, Kevin, and let's interrogate you here. Where were you the night of the game, and how did you experience it all play out?
Well, I just want to say that in America, we used to have this thing that people would say about, like the baby boomers used to talk about, where were you when JFK got shot? This is what this is like for us now as Jet fans. Like to see him come out with the American flag on September 11th. It was like when Kennedy arrived at the airport in Dallas. It was beautiful, flowers, roses, gorgeous. Moments later, he was gone. That's how it feels for us Jet fans right there. I was at a bar. I was actually just finished a job interview. Was waiting to meet my new boss, who's also a Jet fan. Uh, I was sticking around waiting to meet him when the events unfolded. And when he came over to actually greet me, I swear to God, I was like hovering above my body, just like, "Hi, nice to meet you. Are you a Jet fan too?" It's just like the world came crashing down like that. It's unbelievable. Still can't wrap my head around it.
And what was the vibe then like from everyone else? I mean, like, we can only imagine, that sense of shock, and we've looked forward to this for months on end. We are going to the Super Bowl. What is that immediate feeling like? Or were you able to explain it for half an hour? Or is it completely numb and you can't even remember what it was?
Yeah, almost a little bit of like an absence of feeling, and just like, oh my God, is this really happening? Like there was there was there was more Jet fans than Bill fans in the house where I was at, and that was a really nice feeling. Again, we were kind of the stars of the off season, and all of a sudden just got real quiet. You know, I mean, well, you didn't even want to hear any sort of BS, sort of like maybe he's okay, because the look on his face really said it all, and that same face, that same reaction, kind of was throughout the whole fan base. That sort of dead behind the eyes look. It was horrible.
It it was um it was even weird watching it here because it's like what 1:30 in the morning, and like most people are watching it by themselves, and you're texting your mates, "Are you awake?"
Yeah,
You do realize what's going on, the magnitude of this, and then like we almost had like a second wave at like 2 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. when people were waking up going, "Oh my god, here we go again." So like we sort of experienced it twice if you're watching the game. Um, Kevin, just before we bounce, man, can you
yeah,
talk to us a bit about your family's Irish roots? Do you have any Irish roots yourself?
yeah. Well, we're from Dublin. My name's the bar I went to. Uh, we're from Dublin many years ago, but the bar that I went to that night, called Hendrickson's. Everybody who owns that place is Irish. And they're all coming up to me, and they gave me the quick check, the look, and they're like, "You Irish?" And I was just like, I said, "I'm Kevin." So no, but we are very proud of our Irish heritage here, especially in New York. Grew up celebrating St. Patrick's Day for a couple of months. Come February, we started celebrating already over here. So yeah, we love Ireland. We went there as a whole family in 1996. So, and we were talking about going back. Then the pandemic happened, so we're still trying to get back.
Kevin, your brother has another successful podcast. If anyone, my favorite moment from the podcast is when he tells the story of the Hanses coming to Ireland and going down to Waterford. I don't know if you remember the story
Oh yeah.
of when they handed you the college football trophy.
Well, I mean, it was a very terrifying moment to be holding that.
And she called it the Lombardi. That's what he told us.
Me?
No, he said that the woman told you guys as the family that
that's
this is
that
the
was
Lombardi.
yes. No, yeah. I mean, it was
The Waterford Crystal.
the NFL has made many great inroads into Ireland since then, and I think now the people at Waterford might know the difference.
Hopefully. Here, to wrap up, what do you hope for the rest of the season for the Jets? Do you want them to go out and get one of these like B-list quarterbacks, or are you just like going to bury your head in your hands for the next year, 2 years, 55 years until they go back to this playoff?
I just think, like Coach Salah said, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping.
Yeah. Kevin, you're 1-0, man. You're going to Vegas with Zach Wilson, yeah? This has to be it now.
We're not going all the way, but this defense is going to fight tooth and nail every step of the way to prove to everyone who they are. I think they said that the Monday Night Football game had the most viewers of all time. So millions upon millions of people saw the determination and the grit of that team. So just like I watched them last year, just like I watched them the year before and all the years before that, I'll be there every Sunday watching. And I really hope we can squeak out. Maybe we can carve out 8 wins with this defense. You know, I'm not I don't have any delusions of grandeur about things. Zach Wilson is not the guy. Sorry. You know, he's like a kid in there. You know, a real underdog around all these grown-ups. So I don't think he's going to lead us anywhere really, not even close to the promised land. But again, the team is stacked, and we're gonna mess up some people's seasons. That's what we're gonna do.
Spoken like a true fan, a true Jets fan, the hustle and the grind that you guys, I know you're well used to, but I think you're right. I think that they absolutely will have a say in things. That defense was good enough to get them to the playoffs last year. They just missed out. Garrett Wilson's going to be even better this year. You hope that Zach Wilson might have learned something from Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, but if not, maybe the LA Rams are poor enough through the end of the year that they might be willing to part with a quarterback there. Matthew Stafford in a few weeks' time. But yeah, Kevin, thanks a million for coming
It
on.
still doesn't seem real, guys. Though it still doesn't. Even
I don't know, will it? I don't know, will it?
Like it's a bit.
Do you know? I would love to know, and maybe we'll have you back on when the Jets hopefully someday win a Super Bowl. I don't know, will the feeling of winning a Super Bowl surpass the emotions of what you guys are feeling right now?
Yes, it will. And I will 100% be back. That I will come to Ireland to celebrate with you guys.
Oh, boom.
Kevin, we'll get you on for a proper long podcast, maybe during the season or in the off season, which isn't too far away. Hopefully not for Jets fans, but it'll fly in the next few months. I'm sure at that point we'll tell you about the story about myself and Mark verbally harassing your brother outside of an Irish bar in Phoenix, and pleading for a certain podcast to come to Dublin. But appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you giving us a little feel from what New York's feeling. And like, look, obviously wish you the very, very best luck throughout the rest of the season. And for everyone watching and listening, massively appreciate everybody tuning in to Ireland's biggest NFL podcast, Pro Football Ireland, NFL Ireland, on all forms of social media: X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Michael McQuaid, Mark Hogan, Kevin Danger.
Thanks,
Enjoy
guys.
week 2, folks.